Hey, all right, and welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. And it looks like we're on a video chat here, so you can't see it, but joining us as always, like we are each other. We're joining each other. So, but we do have a special guest because with Dave is Lucy, Lucy the German Shepherd. So
Yes, and if she barks, that will be who you hear.
that's all right. And but Dave's uptown, safely in quarantine, and Fredo is in Metairie, safely in quarantine, and rocking a beard. That what's that? Like 2 days not shaving? Is that what it is?
More like 2 weeks. I just decided not. Actually, about a week not shaving.
I tell you what, man, my goatee that I have like took me about 2 years to even like just break the skin. Basically, I'm one of those guys. I can actually. I think I shave like once or twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm waiting for puberty to hit. Someday. Uh, but I am obviously safely in quarantine here in the Gentilly area. So, hey, by the way, okay. So you guys have lived in New Orleans longer than I have. Will you please explain to me what's with all the friggin' golf carts? Because I'm sitting here working in my house and I'm looking out the front window and I see golf carts go by. I'm like, what the heck's this? And then we did a beer run yesterday, and but then we picked up dinner at a place in Lakeview, and there were multiple golf carts there. What is it with? Is there something to the culture of New Orleans that I'm missing, or is that just a Lakeview thing? Or
It's more
I
like
don't live in Lakeview, but anyway.
I more imagine that it's a Lakeview thing in terms of, you have all the golf carts available. Nobody's golfing right now, and they're an easy and inexpensive way of getting around. If you want to get outside. I mean, the weather has helped.
Oh, gas is what, $1 a gallon or something? I mean, it's not
Mhm.
like, but no, I was just like, all of a sudden, it's like golf carts. It's like, is this one of the plagues that we're going through right now?
That's hilarious. I have a slightly different guess, which is tourism related. Because I've seen people hum around on these little carts as tourists. And usually those are restricted down like to the touristy areas like the French Quarter, but there have been times where I'm like trying to drive down Washington and I'll get caught behind somebody on one of those things. And welcome to New Orleans, right? It's always
That's what I asked: is how many points are they worth? But anyway,
yeah. Well,
no,
look at it this way: the golf carts are easy to get around. It's not a Mardi Gras float.
There you go. So yeah, all right. So what have you guys been doing this past week? We'll start with you guys because my thing will lead us into one of our first discussions. But what have you been doing to keep yourself sane? Fredo, what are you doing? Oh, I'm sorry, Dave. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah. I've been playing the TurboGrafx 16 Mini, which I received in the mail direct from Japan last week.
And you can't, the listeners can't see the grin on your face right now. This must be a good thing.
Yeah, this thing's ridiculously nostalgic for me. I had one of the original systems back in the late 80s, early 90s. Eventually just let my parents like sell it in a garage sale and then regretted it pretty much every day since. Because they're niche enough to where they're valuable. People spend a lot of money on that, on the games and the system and modding them and everything else. And so when they announced this thing a year ago, I put in a pre-order, and then the coronavirus like delayed shipment of this thing. And so oddly, Amazon of Japan is shipping them, but Amazon of America is not. And somebody somewhere figured that out, and so I was like, I will go ahead and take advantage of this myself. And so I got one, and I've been playing it pretty much ever since. And my wife is currently a video game widow. And kids are constantly asking me for a turn, and I'm trying to give them turns, but also trying to play as much as I can too.
You say put a quarter up on the TV.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, we've been having fun with it. I've been having a lot of fun with it. I'll probably write an article on my blog about it soon too.
Cool. Fredo, what are you doing?
Kind of similar. I mean, actually, I've been trying to finish up Jedi Fallen Order. I'd started it, didn't finish it, so I've been using this time to kind of go ahead and make my way through it. Which, if you haven't played the game, I mean, we'll talk about it later. But it's a very different challenge from past Star Wars games. So it's really fun, really engaging. Gets into some of the lore that you see in Rebels with the Inquisitors and whatnot. So a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it.
Cool. Yeah, well, over here on this end of town, so I continued to do my Marvel homework, and I'll talk to you all here in a little bit about the movies that Brittany and I have gone through and have enjoyed them all. You know, it's been fun. But then I started. I can't. I don't know why. I think it was just last Friday or Saturday or something. I was just like, oh, what the heck. And I remembered Fredo saying on one of our episodes when we were talking about comic books, and he said, well, there's an app for that. And so I downloaded the Marvel
Unlimited?
comic book Unlimited. And, it's like, so I got a week free, and then it's like, $10 a month or something like that. I'm like, you know what, I can pay $10 to get through the comics that I want to get through, and then, cut it off. But I've actually, I read and I'll talk about it here after we do our trivia, but I read the Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir series. And I realized that I'm not in like 6th grade anymore. I'm like, all of a sudden after 20 minutes of, reading, I'm done. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, these took a lot longer when I was a kid. But anyway, then I started reading one of the latest Darth Vader series, which is really interesting because it's just right after Episode 3, and the Emperor is sending him off he has to get his lightsaber, which means he has to fight a Jedi and take his Kyber crystal. Which sounds like a euphemism for something, but we'll talk about that later. So yeah, I've been reading comic books and watching Marvel movies. So yeah, I'm perpetually 12. But
we're in a stunted time period, so it's only appropriate.
Like I said, just thank God that my friends and loved ones, love me for who I am. So don't expect too much. But hey, let's start off with trivia first of all, as we always do. And so I'll give it to Fredo first. And let's see here. Fredo, oh, this is interesting. What's the largest creature seen in all 6 movies? Remember, these are episodes 1 through 6.
Right.
The largest creature seen in all 6 movies.
And I'm thinking about it because, there's a number of options in at least a few movies.
Dave, I haven't flipped the card yet either. So
okay, my guess. Okay, yeah, go ahead. If you wanna guess.
No,
okay,
I want you to go ahead.
Okay, I'll guess it's the Sarlacc.
Okay, you say the Sarlacc. I was actually fighting in my head between either the asteroid monster,
right,
from Empire, or the underwater dinosaur from Episode 1.
From the Phantom Menace, right?
Oh, Dave, what do you think?
I would have gone with the asteroid worm critter, but again, I don't know the official name of that one. But yeah.
Well, the official name, according to Trivial Pursuit DVD Star Wars Saga Edition, is the Space Slug.
Huh.
Okay.
So it is the asteroid one. Yeah, if you think about it, that sock puppet dude is like eating a little tiny, Millennium Falcon. So,
I guess
we don't know how big the Sarlacc is underneath the sand. That's for sure.
Well, the other thing is, if we're talking the DVD special editions, they added the beak and the tentacles,
which that was just wrong.
which just made it bigger.
It just made it Little Shop of Horrors is all it did.
Feed me, Jabba.
I think the Sarlacc was a good guess though, because it could have been a tip of the iceberg situation.
Right. That's what
I went with.
Yeah. But
right.
oh well. But I think the new biggest monster is from Solo, right?
Oh yeah, from the Kessel Run.
Well, I don't know, because again, if you look at how big the Falcon is compared to each one in the shots, I think the Space Slug is probably still bigger because it's little. The Falcon's this little tiny tortilla chip going through between two teeth, and the space thing in Solo is, I don't know, it seemed to be not as the ratio seemed to be a little bit less, but anyway.
We'll have to get a ruling on this eventually, maybe.
Oh, what nerds fight about? All right, so let's see here. Oh no, I'm not going to read that one. Okay. So, how many eyes does the Dianoga use to check out the activity in the Death Star's trash compactor?
Oh, come on.
Well, I would say one.
Well, yeah, and that was an easy one. That's the one I read because the first one that I saw that I wasn't going to read was, who confesses that her first love was a young, dark-haired teen named Paolo?
Batman.
It's like, and that's where her character starts going into the trash. Anyway, all right. So, yes, the Dianoga has one eye. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, so that's two like slimy slug creatures.
Yeah, it's a critter kind of evening here.
All right. Well, here's mine. What planet is Anakin on when he retransmits Obi-Wan's message through to Coruscant? All right. It's not a slug critter thing, but he is on Tatooine. Yep, Tatooine. Let me ask you this. So Tatooine, people, get mad because, we just, always keep coming back to Tatooine, even though we've only been to Tatooine, it kind of made sense why we did. But do you think that Jakku should have been maybe Tatooine, or you think maybe, would you have been okay if we went back to Tatooine or to Familiar Planets a little bit more in the sequel trilogy than we did? This doesn't have to be a 30-minute discussion. Just
no, honestly, I don't think so. Just for example, they get so much of the imagery from the new places again. What I would have liked is, if they had managed to explain, and I don't know, maybe this is a novelization or not, the idea of that maybe a place like Jakku was lush and green at one point, but that the war and all those Star Destroyers crashing upon it forever ruined it and messed it up. Because that would have, again, led into the idea of the legacy of the Civil War, of the Empire, what they've done. As opposed to, it's another desert planet.
There's also something about just certain places. It's like if I could go, if I had a time machine, one of the places I would love to go to would be Vienna in like about the 18th century, because it's like all these big name composers, had something to do in Vienna.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why Vienna? Now, you could say, well, it was close to where everybody lived. Okay, but why? It's like, why is Superman, Batman, and everybody, live like right next door to each other? What is in the water there? So is there some cosmic pull to some of these places? And wouldn't it have made sense for Tatooine just to have this cosmic pull? Oh, we're going back to Tatooine. Well, there's a reason we're going back to Tatooine. It's like there's something. I don't know, Dave. What do you think? This was not on our agenda. It's just me with my.
I like the question because, and I liked your Vienna analogy of it, because it's like, for me, when I think about that question specifically, it's like, why that place, why that time? It was because of the people in it. And if I like to think about it in terms of like a capitalist mindset, right? If someone comes up with a killer product and starts making a ton of money, you know someone else is going to copy that product and start making a ton of money, right? That's how that works. And I'd say like back in those days, if somebody excelled at a particular craft, you would want to learn from them and leech from them as much as you possibly could. And you say, oh, well, that person's having a lot of success in this particular field of study. I'm going to see if I can as well. So like for me, that's part of it. And like to relate that back to Star Wars, the people in Tatooine, that analogy sort of breaks it down. I mean, it was Anakin, and then I guess Luke ended up there just kind of accidentally, as it turned out. And then of course Obi-Wan was there, but he was there to protect Luke. So from that perspective, I kind of appreciate that they didn't like try to rewrite the history of the planet and make it into something that it wasn't. But by the same token, I'm kind of bored with the idea of Jakku, another desert planet. Okay.
Well, of course,
So
that whole argument always bothered me with, you know, here we are at another desert planet. It's like there are only so many biomes. For crying out loud, you know, it's like, you know, there's only so much we can do. But no,
look at the Revenge of the Sith, though. And I know that you have your issues with that film, but like, you look at some place like Felucia or Utapau. There were some really unique planet designs and biomes that they utilized in that film. And that was one of my biggest compliments for JJ with Rise of Skywalker, was that it seemed like he stretched himself visually and was more creative than he was with Force Awakens. So I think it can be done, but you're right. I mean, like, you can only do so many before you begin to repeat yourself.
Yeah.
But I'll say, I mean, and a good example of how it's done right is Clone Wars, because you can go from a planet like Umbara, which is dark and menacing and foreboding, and you can have Dathomir, which is dark and menacing and foreboding.
But in a different way.
Exactly. They're not the same. And I think that's one of the things that Filoni and his artists got into is, okay, we're going to have to show all these different events and battles and whatnot. So they're showing the breadth of the galaxy.
You know, I guess I'll just close with this. I think it would have been, if Jakku would have been Tatooine, for example, I think it would have made total sense, because I keep coming back to, like I said, Vienna with composers, to, you know, Dublin with the writers, you know, or just, you know, pick about any. It's just, there are certain places that people converge. We live in New Orleans, for crying out loud. You know, it's like, you know, we get, you know, we're the mecca for jazz, you know. So, but it's like, and, you know, we can go into the history of why that is with jazz, but there are just places, it's like, why is this, why Dublin and not Cork? You know, why Vienna and not, you know, something else? You know, it's so, I think it's so, because I like, the romantic part of me says there's something, you know, mystical about those places that, you know, is drawing those creative types to that place. And so if we're talking about the Skywalker saga, you know, why not Tatooine? That's where Rey is a scavenger at, instead of just, no, it's not, it's like Tatooine, but it's not, you know. Anyway.
Well, I'll give you another real world example. Like, let's say that you're a chef and you want to learn how to make Neapolitan pizza. So where would you go?
Naples.
Yeah. So, I mean, and again, it's, once a place has established a tradition of a particular thing through its people, it's just a natural thing. That's where you are going to go to learn that craft, I think.
Okay, so I think we're going to have to table this discussion and make it a totally different podcast at some point, because I have a a counter argument to that, but that's not what's on the agenda for tonight. So we're just going to move on. Totally agree with what you're saying.
I can hear the people screaming, "No, you idiots, keep going." So anyway.
But then tune into the next episode.
Dun, dun, dun.
But let's talk Clone Wars kind of. Tomorrow a new episode comes out. First of all, did we like how the last episode went with Ahsoka and discovering? If you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, turn off your podcast now. But when she sees Darth Maul and all that, so did you like that episode?
I did. Honestly, with this arc with Ahsoka and the Martez sisters, I found that it kind of dragged a bit in the middle. Like it could have gone, like dig it, break out.
They could have got there sooner. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also think, and I kind of get why they did it. They needed to connect the idea of her being seen by Bo-Katan and the Mandalorians. They needed for her to see Darth Maul. That moment was really cool, I will say. And, and not having seen Maul from Clone Wars, we've seen Maul in Rebels, but we haven't seen the Clone Wars Maul since we saw him at getting tortured. It was interesting.
What bothered me about that whole scene though with Maul, when you see him, he's in a hologram, and he goes and he looks over the railing.
Mm-hmm.
But I liked that. Like he could sense her presence.
I like that he could sense her presence. I'm talking about a hologram who is now just walking around with it, and I'm going to look over. It's, I don't know. Suspension of disbelief, but it's like you could have just had him maybe just, I don't know. How is Star Wars holograms become interacting with the physical environment that is not around them? I don't know. Right. But yes, I did like how he sensed her, and that was cool. But Dave, overall, you liked the episode, the arc, where it was going?
That was fine. I agree with Fredo. It may have ran an episode long, maybe, because they did kind of repeat themselves there. Oh, we're breaking out. We're not breaking out. We're breaking out. We're not breaking out.
So the next 4 episodes are
Final 4.
What's that?
The final 4.
Yeah. We've got one that's dropping tomorrow is Old Friends Not Forgotten. Then the week after that is The Phantom Apprentice. And then the next one is Shattered. And then the last episode is Victory and Death. And I made the comment in our just private conversation, on Twitter, that last one, had a lot more resonance with me after reading the Son of Dathomir comic series, because I actually saw this article. It said it was basically here's the homework you need to do before the Siege of Mandalore, arc, and one was the Ahsoka novel, and they kind of gave a summary of the Ahsoka novel and the things that talked about the Siege of Mandalore and stuff like that, and then it said also the Son of Dathomir comic series, and so I had read the Ahsoka novel, and so I just decided I'd get a comic book app and read the comic book series, and it was interesting. So it was season 5, I think, that Darth Maul fights Sidious in the Clone Wars, and he gets taken away, and then you don't see him until then Rebels, and he's all sudden in Rebels, but he's coming back obviously in this final 4 episodes. He was back in the last one. But so it's like, what has been happening in between those 2 points? And it's the Son of Dathomir comic. It's Palpatine puts him in, and he's holding him captive. And then Mandalorians, guess the former members of Death Watch, whatever, the ones that were loyal to Maul, bust him out. And we find out that actually, first of all, Palpatine and Mother Talzin. So if you don't know who Mother Talzin is, you're gonna have to watch Clone Wars. Sorry, do the homework. But anyway, she's the Sith. Well, she's not a Sith, but she's the witch on Dathomir, and runs she leads the Night Sisters and everything. But it turns out that she and Palpatine were in cahoots way back in the day, and he was kind of teaching her dark side stuff, and she was kind of infusing some magic, and they were plotting to take over stuff, and then he ends up taking her child from her, which is Darth Maul. So Darth Maul is the son of Mother Talzin, and that's why it always made me wonder in the Rebels episode when Ezra first encounters Maul and he says, "You're a Sith." He goes, "No, the Sith, took me from my mother and did this, that, and the other." So they had all this backstory there.
Mhm.
But anyway, so he's wanting revenge on Palpatine for all the wrong that they did. And meanwhile, the crime syndicates, the Pikes, I guess it's Dark Sun, right? Yeah, they're in cahoots with Maul again. They're trying to it, but so basically, what ends up happening is there's a big battle on Dathomir, and Grievous and Palpatine wipe out all the Night Sisters and Mother Talzin, and the Death Watch whisks away Darth Maul, and so that's going to lead us to this next episode. So that was a really crappy synopsis of what that comic book was,
Mhm.
but and it. So I don't know. How much of that backstory did you guys know about, or am I the only one new to this party?
I hit a few of the same beats from the Clone Wars episodes. There was an episode where Grievous invaded the planet and basically mowed down the Night Sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually interesting talking about playing Fallen Order, Jedi Fallen Order, because one of the planets you do visit is Dathomir during the reign of the Empire. So you go back in there and you do find the Knights, well, what remains of the Night Sisters and the Night Brothers, and they're very much making it a case of, yeah, they got involved with the Sith, and they don't like the Sith, they don't like the Jedi, so it's a very hostile environment because by the time the Grievous and Sidious are done with them, they basically level the whole thing. So there's hints at the backstory that you mentioned, sprung
Yeah.
together.
The thing I found that was interesting was that Mother Talzin and Sidious were, like I said,
What
in cahoots way back when. That was
going steady? They were going steady.
oh yeah. I mean, then it makes me feel a little bit better about the Rebels episode and in Clone Wars as well when you see, Sidious over a bubbling cauldron, and
Hmm.
doing all of his magic spells. That when I first saw that in those animated series, I kind of was like, really, and so now I don't know, maybe I've just been beaten down by life. I'm okay with it now, um, but no, I just thought it was interesting it gave you more insight into Maul's motivation, why he's pissed and who he's pissed at. You know, it's I mean, yeah, Sidious cast you aside after episode 1 because you were cut in half,
You thought you were
you
dead.
know? So,
Right.
I mean, anyway.
Yeah, that in and of itself isn't probably enough to justify a homicidal revenge plot, an obsession against the uh, emperor. But like adding more to that story makes sense to have him to justify more of that hatred that he has for him. It's clear. It's Emperor and Obi-Wan. Those are the objects of his hatred.
Because
The
you reminded me of something right quick. I was watching this YouTube channel, this guy who does analysis of the duels from the movies, and it's discussing the duel between Dooku, Obi-Wan, and Anakin from Revenge of the Sith. What's interesting is that the plan, and you start thinking about it, makes perfect sense. The plan for Palpatine was always that Dooku had to go at some point. He had to be eliminated because he found Anakin, and Anakin was always going to be the apprentice that he wanted. And what I found interesting is when you make the correlation of taking a young Maul, grooming him and racing him up, he wanted, and then when he falls, then he turns his attentions to Anakin and he grooms and molds him. So it's that idea of he's always looking for somebody he can manipulate and control, somebody who's younger but powerful, and Dooku was always just kind of like a bridge once he lost Maul to the next available candidate, which ended up being Anakin.
So the reason why that last episode, Victory and Death, the thing that rang in my head when I saw that episode title was because in the Son of Dathomir comic, the Mandalorians who are fighting with Maul, their whole rallying cry was victory or death. Victory or death.
That end.
So that's makes you, it's an interesting, okay, so they've taken that line that they said throughout the comic and now turned it on its head a little bit, victory and death. So we know the Mandalorians get wiped out. I will say the thing I'm looking forward to is I hope that there's some clear, or at least we're starting to see breadcrumbs of how the Darksaber gets to Moff Gideon.
Well, you kind of have at some point. I mean, we might not get a full answer, but I imagine we'll get a good way of saying, okay, how did it go from because it's got to end up in that cave where Ezra finds it. So that's what's got to happen, because that's where Ezra finds it in Rebels.
Because he's involved somehow with the Siege of Mandalore. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but then eventually Maul gets the Darksaber back to Dathomir.
Dathomir, right.
By Rebel time. So, and we're not going to get that answer then. Man.
Well,
we might get an answer of how he even knows of it, right? Because if he was involved in that siege, then he may have encountered the item during that siege, and I think it's reasonable to assume that he might have.
Well, remember, he has it at the end of when he kills Sabine. So he has it with him when he executes her in front of Obi-Wan.
Oh, so
Satine. Satine, not Sabine. Yeah, Satine. You can't make the names too similar. But when he kills Satine in front of Obi-Wan, he's got the Darksaber. That's how he's wrested control of Death Watch from everybody else. He's holding the Darksaber.
Where did it end up, though? Like, where is it now? Like in the timeline, because
it's supposed to be with Maul. Well,
yeah, but we see him with the double-bladed lightsaber in the trailer,
right? Because remember, he had it when he dueled Sidious when Savage dies.
Yeah.
So he has it there. It's a good question if he still has it, or if he's taking it back to Mandalore.
He had it. I need to go get my iPad so I can. But I believe he had it.
Darksaber Wikipedia. This is where I'm going.
I believe he had it in the Son of Dathomir comics. That's what he's fighting people. Yeah, he did it. That's what he was using to fight with. So he's got it, and when he's whisked away to Mandalore. So my guess is that, I mean, here in the Siege of Mandalore, he's going to be involved in that. It's probably going to be with him. He's probably going to snag it and head off to Dathomir at some point. But then I wonder I want to know how he got to Malachor in Rebels. But anyway, that's another.
Okay. So, all right. So according to Wikipedia, Maul was rescued per your discussion earlier, Aaron. And after he was rescued, he was given back the Darksaber, which had been recovered from the royal palace, which is presumably where it had been left after his duel with Sidious, which means he has it for several battles after that. But I'm not sure if we know.
Well, maybe we'll see it in the next episodes. Who knows?
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, Son of Dathomir, it was, I don't know, it was fun read. Do I feel like I had to after watching the Clone Wars and watching Rebels and things like that? I don't necessarily know. I think I've gotten enough of the only ahas were, oh, okay, he was the son of Mother Talzin, and and Talzin City. Those were the things that made me go, oh, interesting. The rest of it, really, Lucy disagrees with me.
Oh yeah, what's up?
But the rest of it, it was all right. So I still get a kick out of just comic book, kerpows and thooms and their onomatopoeias. It just cracks me up.
Well, I just said it's you're talking how many decades since the Batman TV show, the animated show, and they still haven't devised a better way of denoting high impact, high energy impact from weapons and whatnot.
But I found myself being 47 years old, like sitting on my deck reading this and making those sounds as I'm reading, going doom, doom, doom. It's like, yeah, that's how that would sound. All right, interesting. So you got some comic book writer that's like, what do these things sound like? Krakow. But they actually used a Krakow one in one of them, and that cracked me up because the whole Calvin and Hobbes comic strip, when he's doing Spaceman Spiff and it's going Krakow, Krakow, and so and then the teacher's saying, or I'm sorry, is what's his nemesis's name? The girl. Anyway, she asks, "What's the capital of Poland?" And he's like, Krakow, Krakow. But yeah, anyway. All right. So other news, real quick. We've got a Mandalorian 8-episode documentary series starting on May the 4th on Disney Plus. Are you looking forward to this?
Yeah.
8 episodes, so it's probably going to be what? 1 episode per episode?
Episode per episode.
Wasn't The Mandalorian 8 episodes?
I think it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, particularly I'm interested in, because we've seen some of the, not necessarily this series, but some of the behind the scenes, particularly as they use the wraparound moving sets to denote movement and whatnot. So I've seen some of the technology that they use. Obviously, we get a closer look at the Baby Yoda puppets and some of the other tech. It'll be nice to see. But yeah, it's always interesting to see how they put it together. Doesn't take away from the magic, just to see how the trick is done.
I agree with all that. Yeah, I mean, it'll be fun to watch. We all love to consume the behind the scenes documentaries and stuff. So I'd say probably, I would assume for all three of us, it's going to be fun to watch that stuff.
That's actually my favorite part of like any DVD that I get, is I hope that there's a documentary. I just love those. So yeah, this will be good. It'll be a nice little May the 4th celebration there. So, but yeah, so that's going to be cool. Now to my homework, just give you a little update, because this last episode we talked about, I saw Iron Man and Iron Man 2 on the crap that Aaron should be watching and hasn't watched, and now is getting caught up. So, but since then, my wife and I have watched Thor, Captain America First Avenger, Avengers, and we watched Iron Man 3 last night. And I made the comment to you guys that I'm starting to see the hubbub, kind of where the Marvel versus DC, people kind of butt heads and stuff like that. As much as I like the DC movies, and I do, except for Martha's your mom's name? Martha's your mom's name? But the Marvel movies, they're better written. They're more character driven, where I think the DC ones are a little bit more action driven. But and it's you get more. Oh, like this last one, Iron Man 3. Brittany said, and I agree with her. Said she was appreciative that they showed Tony Stark with PTSD. You don't think about that with these superheroes. They do things and it's like, oh, no big deal, ma'am, and salute and off they go. It's like they've seen some stuff, and so that is really interesting. Gosh, Captain America was so much character driven. So with Thor, they all had this character journey that they went on, and it's more about, the story and more about the person than it was, you know, an action movie. So I'm really enjoying them for that reason. I love the fact that things tie together. I love the fact that Captain America's shield is made by vibranium, which comes from Wakanda, and Black Panther. It's like just all those little nuggets that it's like those. It's not even like an after the fact, like, oh, let's put this Easter egg in here. It's like, no, we have to sow these seeds, purposefully in the right place. It makes sense. So I could see how Marvel fans get kind of upset at DC fans, because it's like you're taking our ideas for the most part that we've put into movies and you're just kind of using them as, you're not giving them the right amount of stuff to it. That's what I guess that's poorly said. I will say, however, of all the movies I've watched so far, Avengers was the biggest letdown. And it was because of what I just said. It seemed like everybody's character journey that they went on was just thrown out the window. It's like, I understand that if you're going to bring in a bunch of alpha dogs, and say you all have to get along, that there's going to be a breaking in period. They're not all going to like each other right away, but it's like they beat that horse for more than 3/4 of the movie. They didn't get along until like the last 15 minutes, and it's like, and I was telling Fredo before we went on, is like Captain America was pissed for, there's the McClunky. Lucy tried to edit me there. But, Captain America was pissed but it was never really explained why he was pissed, because, okay, yeah, I get it. You were in a coma for 70 years, but he was just mad like the entire movie. And, he and I know there's probably some baggage there with Tony Stark's dad and stuff. I don't know. But it seemed like everybody's, Thor learned his lesson on how to be a good leader, and then he's like the farthest thing from a good leader in the Avengers, and like I said, Captain America, when he's told to be a good, always make sure you're a good man, and his heart is is in the right place. He's very selfish and just not a team player, really. He's forcing leadership upon and his leadership in the places, and forcing people to do things. It just seemed incongruous to everything I saw before. So I enjoyed it, but it's just awkward. So
did you like Captain America the best? Because that seemed to be the one you had the most positive reaction to in our DMs.
Oh, I don't know if I liked it the best. I think it was the one I was most surprised that I liked as much as I did. Because I really knew nothing about. I knew it had something to do with, like, with obviously World War II, but didn't really know what that story was. But it was enjoyable. Really liked Agent Carter in that movie. Brittany and I have decided that Marvel does it was actually nice to see. You're starting to see female characters that are strong and kick butt and are smart. Pepper Potts, in the first two Iron Man movies annoyed me because, like I said, she ran around like the 80s slasher, victim. In Iron Man 3, now finally she, starts to kick some butt, but no, like I said, I'm enjoying them all. Like I said, I was surprised that the Avengers one made me just kind of go, oh, I was expecting more. I don't know why, but
I'd say with the when you talk about shit, you always say check your expectations at the door, that kind of thing. If you look at the crossover movies as being representative of a crossover comic, you probably go into it expecting less from the character development side and just more from the spectacle side, which is kind of what those comics were all about. Every time there was a crossover, it was like that. And so, like, they're very true to that, the spirit of that, in that way. But it's also, I understand where you're coming from, because for the most part, I agree with you. The crossovers are always less interesting to me than the character pieces.
And isn't it like supposed to be the opposite? You know what I mean? It's like this
Yeah.
is supposed to be the, you know, the icing on, you know, the cherry on top. You know, it's like now you get everybody in the same movie, and it is, you know, like we've talked, like Fredo, you mentioned the super groups. You know, when you have, you know, two bands that get together and make a super group, it's like they end up usually only having one good hit. The rest of the album is trash usually.
Mhm. Right, because what you end up getting is you get a lot of strong personalities who know how to work within their own group dynamic. But when you put them all together, you're 50-50 on whether you're going to get gold. Sometimes you do, a lot of times you don't, because everybody's got to work their own way. I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm not surprised you kind of had that, because, and I wonder, this is the dynamic that's going to be different for you than for us, because we saw them as they were coming out. So every year, I mean, like Iron Man 1's 2008, Avengers is 2012. So that's a 4-year gap from that to that you just bridge in a matter of days. So I wonder if seeing them all, you get to pick up the nuances and the flaws a lot easier than it was for us, because we're like, oh my God, after we saw the first Avenger, we're like, next year, here comes the Avengers, and you're like, we've been building up to this, we've been building up to this, we've been building up to this, and so there was all this expectation. So when you get the spectacle, you're like, oh, okay, that was awesome, because really that whole third act is the reason you came to see the movie. Is that final battle in New York when they're all together and they're all fighting as one, and you get the big old orchestral score going up, and everybody's just, okay, now I'm sitting back, I'm eating my popcorn, I'm just going for the ride.
Yeah, I wasn't wild about the space fish, whatever that vehicle was. It's like I keep thinking of the, Roger was is it Roger Peters? No, the guy that Kevin Smith always tells, John Peters.
Oh, John Peters, yeah, the
Yeah,
spider.
he wanted the spider. It's like have a big fish flying around New York. But anyway, I will say also that the people who are writing the Marvel movies, they understand how the comedy is good. It's like it's a lot more lighthearted than I thought it would be. But no, like I said, however, I always have the line that's going in my head, of Chris Rock saying, "I think George Lucas going to sue somebody," because it's like you see Iron Man and Batman, you see, oh gosh, you just have these like, oh, that's this over in Marvel, or that's that in DC. I wonder who did that first, and so it's, you're wondering who's ripping off who, because
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
same
then
things,
and trust me, if you were to watch, say, this movie and then watch this movie and then watch the Justice League movie, you're like, oh my God, somebody should have sued somebody for copyright infringement, because you're just taking it all. But as Dave said, that's the dynamic of comic book movies. They're all borrowing from one another as to, oh, hey, you did a team mashup, we'll do a team mashup. You set two heroes fighting one another, we'll set two heroes fighting one another. You've you've blown up your universe and started from scratch, we'll blow up our universe and start from scratch. The number of times that they go and repurpose one another's storylines is rather unsurprising, but it should be.
I'll be interested to see your reaction to Civil War eventually when you get to it. I mean, for lots of reasons. I alluded to a major Star Wars reference in that movie, but there's also so many comparisons between that movie and what DC has done. You can compare it to The Dark Knight, in which it doesn't come up as favorably in that comparison. But you could also compare it to Batman versus Superman, because those two movies came out within a few months of each other, and it comes out very favorably in that comparison. So I'll be interested to see that. And the other thing I'll say too about these crossover event movies, I kind of internally roll my eyes when they start, because at the beginning, for there to be conflict and for there to be any doubt about the outcome, because you're putting all of these superheroes together in which there's no way anybody short of God himself could defeat them.
Mhm.
The only way for them to potentially lose and for you to have any drama is for them to not be getting along.
No,
And so you know that going in, and you're like, well, how are they going to not get along in this one?
see, you sounded like me talking about Solo before it came out.
Solo.
Oh,
It's like the Kessel Run was always, it's like, how is this going to be, how is this going to be anything that puts me on the edge of my seat? Because we know that everybody in that ship is going to come out alive,
Right.
or when Chewie's dangling over, the train and heading for a rock, it's like, you ain't going to die. But for some reason, and Fredo and I went and saw Solo together, and it was like, still, that was my second time seeing it. And it was like on the edge of my seat, clawing at the armrests, but no, like I said, I really have enjoyed the Marvel movies. They're really well written. I will say, after 3 Iron Man movies, I'm just about done with Tony Stark and his shtick. It's kind of like, I like Robert Downey Jr., but it's like I'm kind of wishing those movies were 2 years spread apart for me, because he gets a little exhausting in watching 3 movies in a week and a half.
But it's gonna be
yeah, they're going to cut down the amount of times he appears, so that's going to be good for you. I'm also curious.
I like the character. I like him, and I thought Robert Downey Jr. did a great job. But it's kind of like Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack. He's great, and then all of a sudden in Caddyshack 2, they give that character a whole bunch of stuff, and it's like, anyway.
Are you going to try to rewatch any of the ones you've seen?
Yeah, no, I think when it gets to, we're talking about that, when it gets to Guardians, we haven't seen Guardians for a while, so we'll watch that again, just to, knowing what I know now, seeing how much after seeing Captain Marvel and, and these other ones, and just, it'll be interesting to see. So yeah, we will. Yeah.
I recommend that one for sure, because it's important. They kind of lay out the roadmap of how everything's going to unfold in that movie. So
yeah, so I'm doing my homework. So next up is Thor: The Dark World. Is that right, Fredo?
That is correct. And then follow that up with Captain America and the Winter Soldier.
Yep.
So.
Oh no, you said, yeah, Winter Soldier. Yep. So. Yep. So I got my list here. So.
And then you get to Guardians of the Galaxy, if I'm not mistaken, right, Dave?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
Here, I'll share my list so you guys we can update it if we need to. So I have to do Thor: The Dark World, then Captain America: Winter Soldier, then Guardians, then Avengers: Age of Ultron, then Civil War, then Doctor Strange, then Guardians 2, then Thor: Ragnarok, and then Black Panther, then Avengers: Infinity War, then Endgame.
Yeah. Do we want to mix in the Ant-Man movies?
Well, you said he was willing to do everything.
So we'll update that list. But yes, the next few are Thor: The Dark World, Captain America: Winter Soldier, and Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yep, those are the next 3.
All right, cool. So so we don't just talk about Star Wars.
Well, we mostly do.
Yeah, mostly. But let's get back to Star Wars. The main topic for tonight is Star Wars video games, and we're all to compile our top 5. I'll just say I didn't rank mine. I just have the 5 that kind of ring most true with me. There was probably going to be, we haven't shared our lists with each other, so there's going to probably be some crossover here. So I don't know. What do you say? Should we just kind of go each give one, go around the horn, and then comment on each one of those?
Yeah, I have some alternates, and I don't know if Fredo, if you have some alternates too.
Hey, I might have some alternates.
Oh, you have some alternates?
I do, actually.
Okay. All right, good.
I have one alternate, but yeah.
All right. Well, then maybe let's just all
I mean,
take turns.
admittedly, I am not the gamer that these two are. I do love video games. It's but I'm not the gamer that you two are. So um, which means then I guess I have to find my list. Gosh darn it, where is it?
I do have over a 10-year gap in my gaming life. So I'm probably not even in Fredo's universe, but
that's all right. I mean, I did write a blog piece way back last year, actually, about Star Wars video games. So I have a whole top 10 list if you need me to.
So okay, well I will start, and I'm going to start with the one that I've mentioned before on this podcast, and that was Super Star Wars. And I played that. It was obviously on the Super NES. And this is actually, it came out kind of in that when there was no Star Wars really to speak of, right?
Right.
So it was really cool to, it's a hard game, I mean, it's harder than you thought it would be, that stupid sandcrawler, level. Good Lord. But I will say, and I did not put Super Empire Strikes Back and Super Return of the Jedi on my list, even though I love those two as well. But those two are easier than Super Star Wars, I think. Or maybe I don't know, developed my skills, and so those two are easier to beat. But I just love Super Star Wars. That was just one of my favorite games on the Super NES. So that was my first one.
Well, you're right about that being like kind of a desert of good Star Wars content when that game came out. There were a couple of NES games. There were a few PC games at that point.
Yeah, that was the
don't mention any, because
I'm not gonna,
on my list.
We're not gonna go down that road. But it was almost Star Wars desert at that time, early '90s. Totally get why you would include that one. I love that game too.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably before that, the last Star Wars game I played on a console was like Empire Strikes Back on the Atari 2600. Where you just fly around in circles until you get to an AT-AT. But so yeah, Super Star Wars. I loved it. The lightsaber stuff to it, the music to it was really well done. The music in it is just fun. So anyway, that was on my first one. So Dave?
I'm going to bring up Star Wars Trilogy Arcade, which was a game that came out in the late 90s. And it was essentially a remake of the first 3 arcade games in one cabinet. And so you'd play through all 3 movies through one cabinet. And it was really just such a enhanced experience over those previous arcade games that it struck a chord with me at the time. Those machines were in the arcades for like a decade or two. And so like anytime you went to like a Dave and Buster's or something, you'd see that cabinet there. And it was always a major challenge for me to resist pumping some money into it. And I usually failed that challenge. So I would include that one for sure.
I remember seeing it at the outside on the entry to a Walmart out in Kenner. Actually, might still be there. I don't know. But yeah,
field trip.
I don't know if you can. Yeah, you have to stand in line for it now.
6 feet apart. If we're 6 feet apart and sanitize everything, we'll be fine.
Yeah, if I find it in there, I'll take a photo of it. But yeah, that was a fun game.
And if we're in a Walmart in Kenner at any time, we probably need to sanitize everything. But anyway.
Yes, you do. But no, it was very colorful. It was one of those motion-driven games, so like it will take you to the next stage of the battle, and then. But it took advantage of the technology of the time to make it. I mean, it's very fluid, and I really loved how, particularly like the Death Star run. For the episode 4 for the Battle of Yavin. That was fun.
And there were lightsaber duels in that game too.
Yes, and you battled Boba Fett, if I recall correctly, in one of them.
Cool. Fredo, what's yours? Your
All
first
right.
one.
All right, then my first one is one that I've mentioned a number of times before in this podcast, so I'll crow about its glory one more time, and that's Star Wars Republic Commando. Just so disappointing that it's we never got the proper sequel. It was the first person shooter, which actually may still be the only first person shooter Star Wars game. I know Dark Force, actually no, Dark Forces did it first, but anyway, um, it it puts you in the shoes of a Republic Commando squad. You're the head of a commando squad, and you're going through various stages of the Clone War. So you start on the battle of Geonosis, getting dropped off, and you got to go capture a number of major. You got to get your squad and connect with a number of um, objectives, and then sometimes they'll take you to a particular mission where you got to rescue this downed separatist vessel, and it plays very much like a horror sequence because it's all dark and obscure, and you don't know where it's coming from. You meet the super star destroyers, and they are very dangerous. I mean, you see, you're accustomed to seeing in some of the other games. You're like, oh, as a Jedi, you just blaze by them. But this one, it ups the difficulty level. But it was a lot of fun. They use some of the same voice actors from some of the other movies and other projects. And it's disappointing that they never got to make the Imperial Commando, which was supposed to be the sequel, because that would have been fun.
So is this a PC game?
This is actually what it's PC, but it's also it's on the Xbox, PlayStation, so it's also a console game. So it's one you can pick up if you can pick up for your Xbox 360, throw it on, and just go to town. It was a fun time.
I might have to look that up.
If you need it, I still got the copy. If you got your Xbox 360.
Was there a cliffhanger in that one? Because that video you sent us about that game, I think that he mentioned that they kind of left the story hanging in the air.
There was a cliffhanger regarding one of your squad mates disappearing.
Okay.
And so so there was a cliffhanger left there regarding the story. One of the things that's also interesting for me is this was one of the first times where a Star Wars project took the idea of the clone army and try to give them personalities. So so they get, even though they get a different voice actor for the roles of the squads, they're 4 clones, but each it's a different voice actor with a different personality, with a different attitude. So, but it's very fun. It's all the sound of the whole idea of a cohesive squad unit.
Well, my next one, you mentioned it, is Dark Forces.
Nice.
And this is, and I really, it's interesting. The reason, first of all, Doom was really big, obviously, and and I really I really don't like the whole concept of Doom. It's, and if we get to one of my other games later, you're going to hear it just seems very not into the very dark, very violent stuff. But when it came to shooting stormtroopers, suddenly that's okay, and but it was one of the first PC games that I actually got. PCs I had was, to do schoolwork and stuff like that, and I actually bought a game for it. And I really dug Dark Forces. It was just kind of fun to kind of feel it. I don't know. It was just fun, shooting up stormtroopers. So
I remember playing that in college on my friend's Mac, and it was the first time I played with a mouse and keyboard, and you move around and you shoot. And I will say, those early '90s or mid '90s PC games used to give me a bit of motion sickness because those backgrounds would just move real quick. I mean, they were, you go, okay, the wall's moving and you're moving. All of a sudden, you're like, oh god.
But isn't it funny though? Like I said, you take Doom, and I have a problem with Doom, and it's just, but you take basically the exact same game and put them in with stormtroopers and stuff like that, and suddenly it's like you're anesthetized to the whole thing. It's hypocritical. I get it, but it was I don't know.
I like both games, so I love Doom, and then when Dark Forces came along, I'm like, this is a Doom knockoff, but I love it. There were also some horror elements in that game where they were like experimenting on troops, and like when one of those dark troopers would come at you out from behind like a door or something, there were like some McClunky moments.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my second one, and I think I took one from Dave. Good thing that he had some in the back
Yeah.
because I saw your face go
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, no, you did. That was on my list, but I'm gonna throw a kind of a kooky one out there. Star Wars Angry Birds.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody was in a big old Angry Birds kick for the longest time, right? For like a couple of years there. Everybody was playing Angry Birds all the time. And so they finally at some point they licensed Star Wars. And I remember being like so taken aback by that, like that marriage. I'm like, what? How? Why? But it worked. And it was a really fun game. And they made a sequel, and there were all these add-ons you could buy, and I didn't go that deep into it, but it was just really fun game. And I have a lot of nostalgia for it.
They made a really good use of the gravity system for some of the shooting in space when you had to launch your little bird
Yes.
to try to hit. So that was good. I mean, I got some really good memories of my nephew just grabbing my iPad. And it's like, just because you unlock a certain number of characters every so often, unless you want to buy more. So I'd have to, a week before you'd come in, I'd have to grab my iPad, just start grinding to just build up a big old roster of characters because he'd just go through them in one afternoon. Because, he's like 5 years old and he doesn't understand the idea of, okay, I'm shooting it down, I'm shooting it up, or whatever, I don't care. And okay, I'm out of characters, give me more. Give me more of the little, it's like, well, I'm not going to spend money here, kid.
Yeah, I think that's when my interest started waning, and that is like when it was like, just give me the game. I don't want to have to like all the in-app purchases and everything like that. It was just like I'll just go back to the old Angry Birds. Thank you. Even though it was, like I said, I love that game as well. The Star Wars Angry Birds. So cool. Right on. Fredo.
Okay. Next for me, and actually I'm going to skip around on my list just to make sure I get one in that may end up being in some of yours. Rogue Squadron 2. I don't know if you ever played the Rogue Squadron series. Dave did. It's okay. So you would think you have one of the coolest spaceships ever in movie history, the X-Wing. You want to fly an X-Wing, so they put you behind the cockpit. You would be playing in the role of Wedge Antilles as the head of Rogue Squadron. And the first one was on the N64, and the second one came out just on the GameCube. And you could tell the advancement technology from one to the other because the N64 one was fun. You get to fly around in the battle, so Yavin, Hoth, the Space Battle of Endor. But you'd also give you other missions like escort missions. You get on Y-wings and bomb targets. So hey, and not the gravity whatever bombers from Last Jedi, Y-wings. And they took really good effort in separating the X-wing from the Y-wing from the A-wing. So even a TIE fighter, every now and again you'd unlock a TIE fighter, so you get that sense of, oh geez, there's no brakes on this thing. But it was really fun. You get into the dodge fighting elements of piloting an X-wing in the middle of a battle. I'm always disappointed they haven't brought that back.
Yeah, I would just say that series was really good. There were earlier flight sim series in the Star Wars universe that were almost more like flight sims, and these games were a lot more actiony. And so, like from that perspective, if you want more action, then they really would scratch that itch for you.
Yeah, because I know some of the series were really, really. I mean, you could get into seriously piloting whatever ship you wanted. But what I loved about Rogue Squadron is like you want to pick up the controller and you want to fly a mission, and it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, and they were on the N64, the first one, and then the two sequels were on the GameCube, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which was a shame they never ported to other consoles. I mean, if they bring out a port for like the Switch, I may buy a Switch for that.
Good luck. I've been looking to buy a Switch and they ain't out there.
Yep, everybody's buying it because of Animal Crossing.
So everybody like bought them up like toilet paper. It's like, I don't know. However, you mentioned Animal Crossing, because I follow her on Twitter, Brie Larson. Her tweet today was, "I change clothes more in Animal Crossing than I do in real life." I was like, oh, well, let's see what sick trolls said after that one. But anyway, so my next one on my list is Jedi Power Battles, and that was around episode 1, because it was, I am one of those. I've said it before. I liked episode 1. I didn't mind, one of the criticisms that everybody had about, the prequels was that you had lightsabers everywhere and Jedi battles everywhere. And it's like, that's what I've been waiting 15 years for. I mean,
Right.
and so then to have a game where I can, be Qui-Gon Jinn, whips, just be a Jedi, it was a lot of fun. It was, I played on a PlayStation 2, I think. No, like I said, it was fun. I liked episode 1. I liked Jedi. It was just a fun Star Wars game. And again, I really hadn't played a Star Wars game. Well, I guess, I had Super Star Wars, and then I played, Dark Forces. Jedi Power Battles was kind of the next one that I, so you can kind of see I leapfrogged, things, but it was a great game. So a lot of fun.
It was better than the PlayStation versus fighting game.
Masters of Terrascasi.
Yeah.
Which I always love that Solo brought that concept back. He's proficient in Terrascasi. And I'm like, way to call back to something only about 20 to 25 people know.
I freaked in the theater when they dropped that reference. I was like, yeah!
Because
everyone else.
What are you talking about? Yeah.
But on a tangent here, that's what's great about the movies now, are they're being directed and written by fans, and not just people who, oh yeah, I like Star Wars, but people who grew up and loved Star Wars. So you're going to get those references. Yeah. But I don't remember anything really special about Jedi Power Battles, except it was, like I said, it was Jedi lightsabers, and it was fun. So,
which I always for years I always thought, I'm surprised, we have racing games where, like, people will, particularly now, where you can go online and deck out your car and race them. And I'm surprised we never had, fighting games like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. Surprised we never got a Jedi fighting game. I think the closest one was in, there was a novelization, the game adaptation of episode 3 had a multiplayer or level where you could duel one another. And I was like, that's the smartest thing LucasArts could have done. Just, okay, design your own Jedi, design your own lightsaber, duel one another. And then just increase the levels of difficulty by, okay, do you want damage to be permanent? Do you want to duel for lightsabers? Like, instead of racing for pink slips, you duel for the other lightsaber. And I'm like, why does nobody do that?
My son got a lightsaber dueling game for the Wii for Christmas, and it's based on the Clone Wars. So it's got all the Clone Wars models, Obi-Wan, et cetera. That's tricky, though. I don't think they had the control scheme like down 100% for that. And you got to wave your Wii or controller around, and you're gonna threaten to throw it through the television.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Dave just said you got to wave your Wii around. And...
but
not that one. The other one.
Please don't do that. Yeah, and don't tell them nothing to it. But no,
McClunky.
Yeah. No, but it's the idea of, if you're gonna be doing online racing, doing whatever, you gotta have good internet signal. You can't have any lag, because that's gonna be the difference. Is gonna be minuscule when people compete. I mean, you see it right now when people play Madden online and somebody's tackle, hits the tackle button a second too late, and they miss their tackle. All of a sudden, they get upset. So anyway.
At the risk of spoiling someone else's list,
well, you're
the VR.
List, so.
Well, I was just gonna say the VR options now for lightsaber battling are much better.
Hmm.
Yeah.
They are.
But that's a different thing entirely. My my next one will be Shadows of the Empire for the N64. I think it was a launch title, or at least it came like really, really soon to the debut of the console. And at the time, it was just like this tantalizing thing because I was like already knee deep in the PlayStation at that point. And my brother ends up getting an N64 for several games, and that was one of them. And so I got to play it through my brother. Um, and that Battle of Hoth was just kind of life changing at the time. That like no one had ever really done that justice to that point. Taking down those walkers with tow cables. And so just to experience that in a game, it felt like you were doing it.
Did you
It
read
was
the
magical.
Did you read the Shadows of the Empire book?
I don't know. I never did.
Okay, I'm going to loan it to you because I really enjoyed that book. I was never big into the EU, and I know it's also people kind of pan the book. They kind of get turned off by it, but I really dug it because the thing that I never really liked about the EU was that it happened outside of the paradigm that I knew Star Wars to be. It happened outside, everything happened outside of, 4 through 6. And this one happened in between Empire and Jedi. And it was, the whole thing is like we're trying to find Han, and you get into some of Luke's training. You get into it's a really interesting book, but the whole concept, that game was part of this whole concept of there was it was book, it was game, there was other. I mean, they had toys, they had comic books, I think, as well. It'd be interesting. That's why I was wondering if they're going to do a similar thing with this Project Luminous. Is it just, it seems like it's just going to be books, but wouldn't it be cool if they would have done, we're not going to do a movie for this kids, but we're going to have books, we're going to have video games, we're going to have, but anyway, keep going about it.
Oh no, I was gonna just dovetail off that. I think that's a really good point. That's kind of like what we know of the EU today, which is like they're trying to cross over between comics and games and books, and have them sort of like lead into the movies. And like they were kind of trying to do that with Shadows of the Empire, and we hadn't necessarily seen that. Um, Not to that degree, anyway. Like you said, there was a book, there was a game. I think there were comics. So kind of
Well,
a cool thing.
never played the game, but I read the book, so I will have to loan you the book. Like I said, it's just kind of fun. So
The game's good. It's not great, but that whole Hoth sequence, and it basically created the template for Rogue Squadron.
Hmm.
So
They took that Hoth battle and just kind of went, okay, how can we do this? But a whole game of that. So,
yeah.
okay.
Fredo,
So
what's next on your list?
next on my list, I'm going to go with. Actually, we're talking about Dark Forces, and I'll mention one of its sequels because what's interesting is Dark Forces became Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight, which then became Jedi Knight 2, which is a game I mentioned about, which is the story of Cal Katarn when he
Oh yeah.
becomes a Jedi. And I played that on the PC around the turn of the century, and it makes me sound old.
Sounds weird.
I know. Turn of the millennium. Okay, whatever. Anyway, but it was a really interesting story. It was the first time that you were getting customizable lightsaber, skill tree for your Jedi powers, light side versus dark side powers. You go through this story, reconnecting this character to the Force, and gaining the ability to do force pull, force push, all the stuff that you wanted to do that you saw in the movies, and but putting you in the middle of the Galactic Civil War. So it was very much a fun continuation because Dark Forces is just straight up just shooting around. Jedi Knight or Dark Forces 2 kind of started mixing in the you could be shooting, you could be lightsaber, and I think a lot of people just went, no, look, you give me a choice here, I'm gonna take the lightsaber every time. And Jedi Knight 2 kind of took it the next step.
And that went from first person to third person.
Very much so.
Yeah, and so like you were kind of over the shoulder. That you can't do a lightsaber any other way, really.
No.
And so yeah, I remember that game too. I think a buddy of mine like copied it for me, and so I was able to play it that way, and it was a lot of fun because you're shooting force lightning at people, and I mean, can't beat that.
All right, so I'm going to jump in here then with my next one. I'm actually skipping one on my list because it's interesting that you said that, Dave, because I on my list is The Force Unleashed, and the first and I'm conflicted by that game because I don't like the way it starts out. First of all, actually, I remember the first time I played this, I was like, sweet, I'm Darth Vader. What? I gotta kill Wookiees? Well, I'm like, my wife comes down. It's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I don't like this game. I have to kill Wookiees. You know, it's like you're just killing a bunch of Chewbacca's. It's like might as well just be Old Yeller on repeat. You know, it's like this is awful. And then so then you get past that, and so now you're, okay, this is a little bit better. I liked running around doing all the Force stuff, and yeah, you're Force pushing and you're using lightsabers, stuff like that. I didn't have as much problem with Force choking Jawas and chucking them, through around everywhere. I really like that game. So let me fast forward to just a couple days ago, and on my Xbox, I was like, you know what? Let me put in The Force Unleashed 2.
Ooh.
I don't remember I don't remember having played that, or when I got it, I didn't know how much I played it. I didn't remember a lot about it. After 30 minutes, I put that thing down, and it's like in the case, back in the cabinet. It's like I can't deal with somebody that is dark. I mean, you got this guy being tortured and just mind effed by Darth Vader and the PTSD he's going through. It's just like I'm okay. Yeah, it's fun really doing this to stormtroopers, but I'm done playing this. I don't need this kind of negativity in this, time of pandemic and everything like that. So I needed to find a more uplifting game to play. So I went and played my Nintendo Classic, box that I have in the other room. I played some Mario Brothers, but it was a fun game though. Force Unleashed, like I said, it was fun. I didn't like the very first level. And I find that interesting, that dark side element is just, it can weigh on you. But
I like the games that give you a choice. So you can go down the dark path or the light path. So that helps. Because playing the dark stuff all the way through can be a little, like you said, it can weigh on you.
You're Wercrux, man. Yeah. Fredo, you were going to say
yeah.
something?
No, and I was going to say, I remember back when they first showed the first footage of the first Force Unleashed, which, by the way, did you ever play I don't want to say if it's the Ultimate Edition, Special Edition of Force Unleashed 1? The one that has the little coda at the end, the little extra scene on Hoth? Okay.
I think so.
Okay, so spoiler alert for a game that's 12 years old. Basically, if you bought the Special Edition of that game, if you chose to kill Darth Vader, you became the apprentice of the Emperor. And you were on Hoth, the Battle of Hoth, and your final battle is you duel Luke Skywalker and turn him over to the dark side. So, and Aaron just went, no, sir, I don't like it.
Oh,
again, it's the idea of, and it's not so much.
You have to kill any more Wookiees? I mean, because I really don't like killing Wookiees. That was my problem.
It's the whole idea that you're goading Luke Skywalker. You cut off his hand, and eventually you see this evil look on Luke's face with the yellow eyes and everything, and he becomes your apprentice. So the cycle continues, so to speak. But yeah. No, but what I think Force Unleashed kind of did that was really good was just that sense of the power of the Force that you could, put your hands on and just blast, a dozen troopers away. Comparing it to the game I'm playing right now, which I'll mention later, it's a night and day. But anyway,
Well, it was kind of it was an amped up version of Jedi Power Battles, right? I
Mhm.
mean, it was it was just on steroids. But anyway, so
yeah, you can see it
Dave,
go from that to that to this. Yeah.
Dave, what's next on your list?
Next on my list is Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga.
Yeah,
Which,
that was on my list as well. Yeah.
yeah, that's just one that I really enjoyed pre-kid. It was a fun game, but
I don't have
I
kids and
never,
I enjoyed it. Yeah.
I never would have figured. I mean, I guess I could have predicted, but I don't know to this degree that I would have predicted that my son would obsess over this game and want to play it all the time, basically. It's just an incredible game
Well, let's
to.
face it, Lego and Star Wars was the perfect marriage. You
I
don't
think
get
so.
a better marriage of two IPs.
Mhm.
I really don't
It's
think. Anyway.
it's a good gateway drug to Star Wars.
Very much. And like, to people who haven't played it before, they tell the story of the movies in the game. So you're basically playing through the game, but in Lego form. So like they're reenacting all these famous scenes with these little Lego guys, and they're doing it in a humorous way. Almost like Onion-esque in a way, like sort of lampooning what really happened. And it's just fun to run around. They have a gazillion unlockables and hidden secrets and things that you can find in these games too. So there's a lot of replayability. They're really easy to get into. You can't really even die in these games. So you can play them with your kids. Um, they're just really, really good. Um, so pretty much all of the Lego Star Wars games would fall into that category, but the one that came out for the one specifically I'm listing was the one that came out for the Wii, and had one episodes 1 through 6 represented. So, Aaron, which one were you playing?
Oh, I have actually both. I have, the one that's just Lego Star Wars. Then I got the complete saga for Christmas one year. And on a tangent, Lego Indiana Jones is just as fun. But anyway, that's different podcasts. So, but yeah, no, it is. It's one of those things. Okay, so you talk about the Force Unleashed and how dark it is. Lego Star Wars is exactly what I should have put in. In hindsight, after being like Force Unleashed 2, I'm like, oh, because it's just fun. It's adventurous. It's but it's Legos. And it's no
There's a
harm, no
likeness.
foul.
Yeah, there's a likeness to it. They're very friendly. Yeah, I mean you're battling the bad guys and you're building Legos and using the force powers, but it's never too serious or too oppressive. It's very light. Mhm.
Absolutely.
So let me go take you then from very light to kind of dark, because the next game I'm going to mention is the one that I'm playing right now, which should be finishing tonight probably. It's Jedi Fallen Order, which, if we're talking about how lightsaber usage and Jedi powers went from Jedi Power Battles through Jedi Knight to uh, Force Unleashed. This one's interesting because it's very grounded. It's as grounded as you can make a Star Wars game. You're not playing a Jedi Knight. You're playing that Padawan who's reconnecting with the Force. They're on the run. They're trying to rebuild the Jedi Order during the time of the Galactic Empire. But it's very dark. I mean, in terms of not just its execution, but in how, in the story, but in the execution, because it takes on I don't know if either of you have ever played any of the Dark Souls games, where the idea is that enemies respawn whenever you save. I mean, you're stronger than most of the stuff you're going to come into at some point, but you can't be beat by anybody because, if they swarm you, you're not super. If the Force Unleashed was still about giving you that sense of how powerful the Force can be, here you're just a guy with the Force, and yeah, the Force can save you, but it's not going to blast 50 people into the air. You're not going to shoot lightning out of your hands. It's very much okay. It's a puzzle. You gotta figure it out. But it does a really good job, particularly in the story of bringing in a lot of the elements, kind of like we're talking about from stuff like Clone Wars and Rebels that we've seen. Well, not so much Rebels, but Clone Wars definitely. The prequel story, because it's all the idea is you're playing this fallen Padawan who went to hiding when the Empire took over, but the Inquisitors are chasing you now, so you're on the run trying to figure out how to put together a Jedi Order. But it's very well done. Respawn Entertainment, who did stuff like Titanfall, they take their cues from a number of different big games, but it's really good.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't played it. They were talking about it at Star Wars Celebration when I was there in April or a year ago. Yeah, no, it looks fun.
By the way, you do get to travel to Kashyyyk a number of times and fight with the Wookiees. So if you didn't like with the Wookiees, you're fighting for the Wookiees. And actually, one of the missions, and it's very interesting, you get to climb the origin tree of the Wookiees. And there's a moment where the camera pans back as you're flying into Kashyyyk, and you get to see all these the shadowlands of the Wookiees and the big tree growing out of it. And so you're like, okay, again, different biome, but it's very breathtaking and well done.
Cool. Well, I'm glad I put another one on my list because Dave stole my Lego one. But because I was actually debating on just having this one on there outright, and that is the original Star Wars arcade game, which is an awful game. I mean, it's got the graphics of Pong, but going into an arcade, and especially if it was the cabinet that was like the cockpit, and when you are, again, 8, 9, 10 years old, sitting in an X-Wing cockpit and fighting TIE fighters and doing the Death Star trench run, that was just glorious at that time. And it's one of those things where it's like, if you see the game and it's in the stand-up, arcade box, it makes you go, oh,
yeah,
it needs to be in the sit-down, cockpit type, cabinet. But that was just one. The music was there. Like I said, the graphics suck. And even as a kid, in the early days of our arcades, you recognize that the graphics sucked, as compared to Donkey Kong and Q*bert, and it was kind of Asteroids-esque, right? But just the fact that it was Star Wars and it was just awesome. So that's
Yeah, I remember actually, if you go into the Chuck E. Cheese that's in Metairie, they used to have it. So the few times we had like kid parties there, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna throw a few coins in there. And yeah, you're right. The graphics are very much Pong-esque. It's very much tonal, 2 colors, and the
one dimension. Yeah.
and the music is played through the the smallest Casio player, whatever, with only one keyboard note playing it all. But it's awesome because it was the first time you could actually get inside the cockpit of an X-Wing and fly into the Death Star.
We talked in a previous episode briefly, I think, about Arcade 1-Up and how they're re-releasing these old arcade games. And I heard a rumor a while back that they're going to release a sit-down version of the Star Wars one. So I don't know if that would be enough to tempt you to get one. But yeah, no, like back then, like there was nothing else. I mean, there was no shot of there ever being anything better than that for like another like another 5-10 years. I mean, that was it. And so like the home version of these games were terrible.
But it was also the first time you could immerse yourself, with the exception of your Star Wars toys. It was the first time you could immerse yourself in Star Wars, and feel like you were actually in the movie. So
that was a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like we talked about Super Star Wars being a version that came along later that kind of gave you some of that, but even within that, it wasn't first person. You weren't like in a cockpit, so to speak, like you were
Right.
with that arcade game. So I'm really glad you brought that one up.
All right.
So for my last one, and hopefully I won't take this from Fredo, but I had to pick Battlefront 2, the 2005 version, not the
Yes,
not the
thank
new
you.
version.
Thank you.
I know I can't really speak to the newer version of Battlefront. I know that some people like them, but there's a lot of purchasable elements, and it has rubbed a lot of people the wrong way with add-ons and things, and the game's being shipped incomplete, and all sorts of issues. They're gorgeous to look at, but I was playing Battlefront back when these games came out, and I'll never forget when the first Battlefront came out. It was a big deal because we talked about the Doom experience in a Star Wars setting. We never had like a Quake or a Halo like experience, a more advanced first person shooter um, in that Star Wars universe until Battlefront came along. And then Battlefront 2 just expanded on it to just an incredible degree. You were able to fight for either side in either era. There were a gazillion worlds that you could fight on. There was a decent story mode, if I recall. There were several space battles that you could engage in. You could recruit Jedi to actually take part in the battle, and they were like just an unbelievable decimating force when they'd come into the battle and basically turn the tide pretty much every time. Um, and I'm trying to recall if I remember right. I think Battlefront 2 came out right when the original three movies came out on DVD for the first time.
Yeah, it was about 2005 towards the end. So it was right after Revenge of the Sith had come out that summer. So I want to say
Mhm.
it came out right as the episode 3 DVD was coming out to everybody. So yeah, it
Yeah,
was,
it was that fall, right? It was
I
like
believe so.
September, and it was like Star Wars mania, at least for me. Like it really took hold at that point. I'm like, I gotta get this DVD set. I gotta get this game.
Mhm.
And George Lucas got a ton of money out of me that fall.
Yeah. No, and look, yeah, I'm not even going to bother talking about the new Battlefront. EA has done nothing but poor things till this last game with the license. That Battlefront 2, I mean, the whole idea of galactic conquest, that you could go from battle to battle, from world to world, and just take over the galaxy, that you could pilot from a space battle to the surface, go back up, that you could be a clone pilot or a clone trooper or whatever, and eventually you unlock some of the heroes. It was a lot of fun. Then, depending on like if you played the multiplayer, because if you play with somebody with the second controller, you're gonna be battling and doing. You look to run to go find one another, just shoot each other in the face. It's like
I
forget the mission.
I will say I do have Battlefront 2 actually for my
Mhm.
Xbox, and not the new one, but the one you're talking about, David. And I do
Yeah.
enjoy that. Yeah, it's you know, yeah, it is fun. It's fun.
Yeah, unfortunately, they never, when they remade these ones, they made them pay to win. Where if you spent all extra, you buy a $60 game and then you spend more money um, buying extra stuff. Oh, your advantage at winning goes up, and you're like, well, that's not fun. That defeats the whole point of playing this game. So, anyway, so
Yeah.
okay, for my last one, then I'll bring up the big one that hasn't been brought up, which is KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic. And no Star Wars video game list is complete without mentioning Knights of the Republic, because I mean, shoot, I'm trying to remember, this came out in 2002, 2003, and it was epic. It's the first time that you kind of got that epic sense of storytelling in a Star Wars game. Because basically, what BioWare did is they were RPG makers, so they made a Star Wars role playing game where all those elements that we're talking about picking your own character, which path you wanted to go, which unlocking which powers you wanted to use. If you wanted to go light side or dark side, you would travel to different worlds and you'd engage in all these conversations and meet all these characters. It was so immersive and so epic in story. And then you get to the big spoilery, big reveal about what your identity is. And I still remember the first time I saw that, me and my brothers just going like, "Wait, what the heck?" And just like totally like dropping our jaws. It was just really well done. Really, it was just a perfect package. I mean, you can still get it. I mean, actually, you can even buy it now for like your phone if you want. It's that old, but it's really well done. I also slight shout out to the sequel they did, which was Truncated, and that's why it's not on my list. But that one got into some of the more esoteric, philosophical elements of the Force, but it's really, really good. I mean, Knights of the Republic 1 and 2, they're the kind of thing that make me look forward to the Project Lumina stuff because I know that they can really take elements like that in any kind of way.
I think it's awesome. And I've still never played either game. They were on the Xbox originally, and I had a PlayStation 2. So I just couldn't for a number of years, and by the time I was able to, I had moved on to other things. And
you
so
mean like wife and kids?
Yeah,
you can't devote 100 hours to a video game, Dave?
I know that's really the hurdle at this point. Is like, can I devote 100 hours to a Star Wars role playing game right now? I don't know, but if anything could get me to do it right now, it may be Star Wars.
Just so you know, I do have both. So if you ever feel the urge to just plug in your Xbox 360 and play them, let me know.
Well, I might be borrowing them from you.
There you go.
I think they're on Steam too. So
yeah, they're on Steam. Like I said, I found they're on the Google Play Store. They're on the Apple, whatever the new, not iTunes, not anymore. Whatever their store name is.
The
App Store. I'm sure it's in there. So, but if you ever feel any that's a good way. Like Aaron, if you want to just be like, because it's like reading a book and watching a movie, but one in which you interact. So it's fun.
Well, right on. Well, that's we each gave our top 5 and didn't really step on each other too much. So, and now I'm sure we all want to go play video games now. But
actually,
no, that's what you're up to, Fredo. You said you were going to go finish Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah. That's my plan. That's my plan. Yeah, like I said, I picked it up when I bought it, when it came out, played a few levels, hit a wall, and then it's like, okay, I'm busy right now. And now that I'm stuck at home like everybody else, I'm like, okay, now I got time.
God stepped in and said, Fredo needs to finish his video game.
That's right. You need to play this. So I'm like, okay, I'm playing it.
The other game I was always curious about was Galaxies. I never tried that one. Did either of you guys?
The real-time strategy one?
Yeah.
No, I never did. By that point up, I had moved from gaming on the PC to gaming mostly on console. And real-time strategy games just don't work on a console. You'd really need that PC for that. And but I never did play it. I'd love to.
I wanted to throw that in there just to make sure that we mentioned it because it was a big deal for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if we had any other omissions, really.
Looking at my list, really the only ones that I could think of, because we even mentioned like in my list, like I'm even looking like the trilogy arcade that you mentioned. I was gonna say maybe episode 1 Racer.
Oh yeah, we've talked about that one.
We talked about that last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so that's a fun get in there, and again, the game that needs a sequel because playing that on a Switch or on any of the new consoles, that'd be a fun way to just get behind you don't have to think too much. Put it on and just play, and you're just racing.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's will I guess wrap up this week's episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. And now, like I said, everybody can go buy these video games and keep yourself occupied while you're staying at home. And but on Saints news, what the draft is this weekend?
Next
2
weekend.
weeks.
Next weekend.
No,
So we'll talk about that coming up. But did you guys see on Twitter that Brandon Marshall was saying that the Saints are done for because Tom Brady is in Tampa Bay? And he was on First Take and was saying, the Saints are done. And so apparently somebody's still upset about being cut. So
it's hilarious. I mean, here's the thing: there's every chance that Tom Brady and the Bucks will be great. There's no reason not to think that Bruce Arians is a good coach. At the same time, though, you think of all the times that, like, say, Brett Favre went to the Jets, really didn't do anything, or Peyton Manning goes to the Broncos, and that first year he's struggling. So,
the funny thing was somebody, I can't remember who said, this is the same guy who said that Jay Cutler was going to be the MVP in 2014. So let's take what Brandon Marshall does with a grain of salt. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see what the draft does. Like you said, next week or 2 weeks?
I believe it is next week, because hold on a second.
Next week.
It's next. It is taking place, according to the Googles, Thursday, April 23rd through Saturday, April 25th.
All right.
From every coach's living room.
So as we're recording the next episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast, we might have the draft board going. So we'll say who the Saints drafted at that point. But until then, everybody stay safe and make sure you're washing your hands and not breathing on anybody and not getting breathed on. And God dang it, flatten the curve. I want to go to a bar. So
I need some tacos and some beer in my life that are not in a styrofoam container I had at home.
That is right. So cool. All right. Well, everybody have a great week, and we will see you next time on the Who Dat Jedi podcast. See us on the iTunes podcast app, whatever that is, and the Google Play, and also Podbean, and Twitter and Facebook, and share our podcast with other people, and nerd out with us. So until then, we will say Who Dat?
Who Dat?
Who Dat?
Have a good week, everybody.
McConkey.